Hey, how's it going everyone? It's Blake here from ChessPathways.com, and today I want to show you all the chess game that made me a master. For some background, about a year before this game was played, in late 2016, I got very close to the master title. I had a rating of around 2192 or something like that, just 8 points away, and then I lost a game to an 1800, took a big hit, took some more hits, didn't fully recover for a while, had some stuff come up and couldn't focus on chess for a bit. But now fast forward to the date this game was played. This is February 25th, 2018. Last round of a 5-round tournament. I had 3 out of 4 in the first 4 rounds, including 2 masters and a strong expert. And I was paired against a 3rd master in this 5th round game. So I knew that if I won this game, that would push me over the master title. That would push me over 2200. I had around 2180 going into this tournament, and I already had a very strong performance those first 4 rounds. So I did the calculations, and I knew that I was playing for the master title here in this game for the first time in over a year. And if you want some more background on how the chess rating system works and how the titles work in chess, I'll go ahead and drop a link down in the description to my video on the chess rating system. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this game. So I had the white pieces against Robert Ramirez, a master, rated about 2250, and I opened with e4, as I do essentially every tournament game where I have the white pieces. He opts for the perk defense, and we go for one of the main lines here. Knight c3, g6, I opted for this very aggressive bishop g5 system, not only getting the bishop outside the pawn chain, but also wanting to continue with f4 and building up this strong center, possibly putting pressure on this diagonal as well. So he fianchettos, f4, castles, queen d2, c6, this is one of the main lines. Black wants to possibly expand with b5 or even play d5. Both are definitely ideas in this system. It's considered an attempt by Black to kind of imbalance the game a little bit, take white out of some of the main, e4, e5 lines or Sicilians. And a lot of higher-rated players will play this kind of system against lower-rated players trying to play for a win with Black. So I was happy to see this, and it would be a fight, and I was ready for it. Now it's interesting because I remember before the round, kind of pacing around in the hotel lobby, I was kind of nervous, thinking, I really have to do good in this game. This is playing for the master title, and I know if I mess up, who knows? I could hit a bad streak, and it might be another year before I get to play for it again. But during the game, I wasn't really thinking of that too much. It was kind of business as usual. I had a job to do, and I was focused on my calculation, not so much, thinking of titles and ratings. So knight f3, this is all still the main line. b5, Black's threatening to play b4, kick this knight away and take the e4 pawn, so I have to defend it. I played bishop b3, and now he played the first move that kind of surprised me, and he played queen c7. I wasn't as familiar with this move. I think it's more common to put the queen on b6 in this line, because then after white castles, there's possible pins to the d4 pawn, possibly even e5 in some cases, although it's pretty hard in this specific line. So I thought queen c7 was maybe a little bit suboptimal compared to queen b6, but probably not such a huge deal, and I decided to go ahead and castle. Black went ahead and played here pawn to b4. I was kind of happy to see this because my knight kind of wants to reroute itself anyways. I play knight e2, and I knew that if Black plays this move too early before they develop some more pieces, there could be ideas to even play c3 and try to open up lines, or even c4 and really try to grab more space. And if they take on passant, that's fine, you just take towards the center. So I know Black sometimes delays this move just a little bit before playing it, just to give themselves some more flexibility to develop. Maybe a move like bishop g4 instead could be considered. But in the game, he opted for the very fast b4. I played knight e2. He followed up with pawn to c5, finally striking at the center, kind of coordinating well with this dark bishop. That's kind of Black's whole plan here. One of these hyper-modern openings where you let white build up space and then you strike at it kind of from afar. But okay, I can go ahead and reinforce with c3, now that my c-pawn is free to move. B takes c3, B takes c3, and now bishop b7. And classic, hyper-modern style, Black's having this double fianchetto, really trying to pressure my center from afar. And I remember this being my first real critical moment of the game. I had played pretty fast up to this point. The first, 10 moves or so was opening preparation, and then it was just a recapture here. But now I have to think. Black's pressuring my center here, right? This e4 pawn's under attack, and there's many conceivable ways to deal with this. So my candidate moves here, and I'll go ahead and drop a link in the description, too, to my video on candidate moves. Very important for your chess thinking process. But I had several candidate moves here, moves I was considering. So they were queen e3, defending the pawn, knight g3, defending the pawn, e5, and d5, right? All of those moves defend the pawn. And last but not least, bishop takes f6 was also a candidate move, just removing a defender on this e4 pawn. So again, I had played quickly up to this point. I remember spending quite a bit of my time on this move. I think I spent over 20 minutes here before I finally decided on playing d5. Just to walk you through some of my considerations here, if I play queen e3, I was looking for my opponent's possible replies. Again, when you're calculating, always have to look for the opponent's possible checks, captures, threats, how you would respond to each one. And I didn't like here knight g4, because the problem is I can't drop back to f2. I would have to drop back to d2 probably. c1 probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so queen d2, and then they can just come back if nothing else, and I either have to accept the draw or pick a different move. I wasn't sure if he would go for this. Maybe he has something better than retreating knight f6. Maybe he can try to make use of the knight here. Probably not, but I didn't like that black has a kind of a forced repetition here, if nothing else. So that made me kind of dismiss queen e3 for now. Again, if I really hated all my other choices, I might come back and consider it. You know, drawing a master is not a horrible result, but I knew it wouldn't get me the master title, so didn't really like queen e3 here. Bishop takes f6 could be a consideration. I think I was more worried about e takes f6 than bishop takes f6. I thought black could play e takes f6, and then try to, you know, further intensify the pressure on my center with moves like rook e8 and then f5, you know, opening both bishops up very much here in the center by playing f5. Plus, I don't have the pair of bishops anymore, and I thought that could be a problem. Now, if they play bishop takes, my whole kind of point here is that I play e5, and I think this might actually be decent for me. But again, I was worried about e takes and just using this pawn to strike at the center with f5. So, wasn't a huge fan of that. Knight g3 I considered, and I remember analyzing this after the game. The computer really liked knight g3, and it makes a lot of sense because you keep your center flexible, you don't push and, you know, weaken any squares. What I didn't like about it is I was worried this bishop could get trapped at some point. But it's not really very easy for black to do that here. For example, h6, bishop h4, and black has real trouble playing g5. So I was a bit nervous about the bishop getting trapped if the knight's on g3, but maybe I shouldn't have been. I just thought maybe at some point in the future, if I were to play, let's say, e5 and take back with the f-pawn, you always have to worry about g5 coming and the bishop getting trapped. But of course, that's probably far off in the future, and I would have ways to deal with it. So I think knight g3 makes a lot of sense, just staying flexible, maybe trying to improve this rook next turn, and meanwhile black has to kind of come up with a plan here, and it's not very easy for them to do, because I'm not abandoning any squares in the center. e5 was another move I considered here, right? Pawn to e5, but now, again, when you push the pawns, you abandon squares, and I thought this knight was probably just going to hop to either e4 or d5. I think knight e4 was the move that concerned me more, because now what do? If I take, I kind of surrender the bishop pair, the bishop comes in. If I play queen e3 now, I thought black could even try to kind of solidify this knight with d5, possibly. Maybe I shouldn't have been too concerned about this, but it looked a little bit annoying. Although, looking at it now, if black takes all the pressure off my center like this, I wonder if I could even play for a fast attack on the king side and start playing moves like f5, maybe even right now. Because I know it's a sacrifice right now, but if they take, I feel like their king is getting really weak and there's bishop h6 ideas. I also was a little worried they could just take the bishop, but I'm probably not too concerned about that. I think I would just probably take with the knight and try to play f5 and attack, and now their bishop really can't get open again because they took all the pressure off the center. So maybe e5 is a very viable choice too. But in the end, after kind of weighing all these options back and forth, the move I decided upon was pawn to d5, just blunting the bishop like this. Now the downside, and what I spent quite a bit of time calculating here, is I was sure that black was going to respond to d5 by playing c4. A very common theme we see in different openings, like even the Ruy Lopez, right, in some of those Chigorin main lines, where, black kind of provokes white to play d5, then they play c4, now they have permanent control of this c5 outpost. And I was trying to analyze lines like what happens on bishop c2, and now knight b to d7. Black's going to try to play knight c5 and really, go after this e4 pawn hard. The bishop's open now. c3 could be a target. And the problem is I have real trouble pushing forward too. It's very hard to play e5 because d5 falls in a lot of cases. Now, I was analyzing here, could I even try to get away with e5 with some tactic based on the e7 pawn falling, but it's not so easy. Just to show you an example of a line I had calculated here, so there's d5, I thought for sure c4, bishop c2, knight d7, knight e to d4, knight c5, right, intensifying the pressure here on the center. And then I was looking at what if I defend my pawn with rook a to e1, and then they try to strike at it with e6, trying to even further intensify the pressure, because if I take, now the bishop gets to join the party and e4 becomes really weak. So here I was even looking at, could I possibly take on f6 and play e5? And the lines get very, very sharp, right? Now if you exchange, then after the bishop moves, I have d6, but you probably don't have to do that. So I remember spending a lot of time, that's why I spent over 20 minutes on this turn, really trying to assess what would happen here after d5, c4. Somehow I still liked it better than my other candidate moves like e5 and bishop takes f6. That might have not been correct. I think, again, knight g3 gives the best advantage to white, and I think black could really get a lot of play here with, c4, knight d7, knight c5, and e6, just really trying to pile up on the center. But my opponent really shocked me in the game. So I played d5, maybe an inaccuracy, and they played knight b to d7 right away. And this really surprised me that they would allow me to play c4 here. I thought, like I said, for sure they would play c4 and really secure this outpost. Because now that I was able to play c4, I was really happy with my position. The thing is, now I have some extra support for d5, which not only keeps this bishop shut out of the game, but now it's much easier to push for e5 because I don't have to worry about d5 hanging in most cases. So after my opponent allowed me to play c4, I was pretty convinced that this has to be really good for me. And it's very important there's no tactics on the long diagonal. For example, knight takes c4 doesn't work. I would simply get 2 pieces for the rook, but that would also severely weaken the black king missing this dark bishop. So I wasn't worried at all about tactics like that. I would just get 2 pieces for the rook, and it's good for me. So after c4, he played rook a to b8. I played rook a to e1, just trying to get every piece involved. I have every piece on a good square now, and I really just want to prepare e5 and kind of just run block off the board with my giant space advantage. So rook a to e1. Bishop a6. c4 is kind of one of the targets in my position, right? It's a pawn that can't be defended by pawns, so black's maybe trying to pile up on it, also just revealing the rook. So now knight c3, again, just setting up for e5. h6, bishop h4. Knight b6, again, going after c4 here. But I calculated that I can go ahead and play e5 right away. Black can't take this pawn right now because, for example, after knight takes c4, that does come with tempo on the queen, but I can simply exchange it off and win a piece, and I would win a piece. So e5, black played here knight h7, and only now I started to get really excited because I knew I had an overwhelming position here. So I played queen e2, just calmly defending this, the c4 pawn, and also maybe setting up queen e4 ideas at some point was also possibly an idea. So queen e2, rook b7, black just wants to double on the b file, I believe was their idea, and also just add some extra support laterally. So rook b7, and I came up with another interesting idea here. Again, I'm not sure if it's best. Maybe I should already be looking to just play like f5 and bust things open on the king side. But I wanted to shut off the b file, so I had this idea to play a4 followed by knight b5. And if you take, you kind of straighten out my pawns and seal off the b file. That was my point. So I played a4, rook b8, knight b5, takes. Black kind of has to take this knight. It can't really be tolerated here. It has too many targets, and it just seals off the file itself anyways. So black took it and played a6, kind of a temporary pawn sacrifice, trying to open that file back up because it's really the only source of black's counterplay. So a6, b takes a6, rook a7. Black's hoping to get their pawn back and infiltrate on the queen side, but I'm trying to kind of dominate the center and king side. So rook a7, and again, even though my position's dominating here, the game's not going to win itself, right? That's a big mistake a lot of players make. If I get complacent here and don't do anything, black is only a couple moves away from playing rook takes a6, rook a8, rook a2, and it's going to get pretty annoying pretty fast as their pieces get really active, right? So I played here queen c2, possibly thinking about sacrifices on the g6 square because black has so few pieces around that king to help, especially the major pieces, that black really has to watch out for this. Plus, the idea is to play f5, just this pawn break, trying to blow open lines without sacrificing anything. Depending on what black does, I would consider both options. So black played here knight c8, trying to maybe bring a knight to help in the defense and also open up this rook. And I decided to play here f5, finally kind of crashing through, creating pawn tension around the king, and trying to bust open lines here. And probably black's best choice is to exchange, even though this looks really, really ugly for them. Now the knight's hanging here, for example, they probably have to play knight f8. But maybe they just have to try this and pray they can hold on, although I really doubt they can. I think I have way too many, promising options here around their king. But I had calculated if they try to keep the lines closed and play g5, then I have a really strong move here, f6, an in-between move. Because now, if they take my piece, I'll take a piece with check and then win another piece, and I get to win a piece. So I play f6, knight takes f6, e takes f6, bishop takes f6, bishop f2. So black does get 2 pawns for the piece. After rook takes a6, they do anyways. And again, the game's not going to win itself here. I do have to be careful because black is going to start infiltrating pretty fast. They have rook b2 coming already with the help of the bishop. If they could play here, rook b2, rook a2, then I have stuff to worry about. But more so than my extra piece, I think black's downfall is really the light squares here. They just really can't contest the light squares, and I have a very strong battery here, and I just rearranged it to have the queen in front. So queen e2, and I remember it's kind of interesting because even though I was really excited about my strong position, I wasn't really thinking too much about the master title and all the rating stuff yet. But after, okay, rook b2, queen e4, I'm threatening queen h7, and it's pretty unstoppable. Rook a2, queen h7, king f8, queen takes h6 check, and I knew they couldn't come to e8 because I have queen takes f6. I was trying to calculate here. I remember thinking, what happens on bishop g7? What happens on, king g8? Where's the finish and all that stuff? King g8, the finish is pretty easy to find. It's just, well, actually, pause your video, see if you can find it. I know I just gave you a big hint. But it's the common little pattern, right? Where you check the king to the corner, then you do the discovery, and then you do check, and then you do checkmate, right? So I calculated that. I calculated they can't come to e8. I was really trying to just calculate here. I said, okay, bishop g7 is forced in this position. Bishop g7 is forced, and then what am I going to do? Just take on g5, and I was really trying to calculate. But they played king e8. Probably, of course, black knows it's lost, and they kind of, kind of made a blunder in severe pressure here. And it was only now, I remember I thought about the rating situation again and thought, I'm pretty sure I'm making my last move ever as an expert here after 5 years stuck in this expert rating bracket as I played queen takes f6. And sure enough, black extended his hand and the game was over. So definitely a day and a game I'll never forget. And I want to reiterate, I was not some prodigy kid when this game was played. I did this as an adult working a full-time job. And if I can do it, you can do it too. It's a lot of hard work, but if you want help on that journey, or whatever your chess goals are, I can help you out. Please make sure you visit chesspathways.com and get signed up there. It's totally free, only takes 5 seconds, and I'll send you a free move-by-move guide to chess thinking when you sign up. As you've heard, it took me way too long to become a chess master, and I want to help you do it in a fraction of the time. Thanks, and I'll see you there.